The vineyard Eli Duncan swore to protect burned, its vines curling to ash under a merciless Ohio sky. What he did next would haunt the valley forever. Flames licked the rows of golden vine, his father's legacy, each crackle a betrayal. Myra's laughter, Garrett's sneer, the poison seeping into the earth. Eli stood, hands blackened, the air choking with smoke and memory. His heart, once broken by her departure, now thundered with something fiercer. The townsfolk whispered of his ruin, but they didn't see the glint in his eyes, the quiet vow forming. The fire had taken his past, but not his fight. A storm loomed, and Eli would be its lightning. The morning mist clung to the rolling hills of Ohio, wrapping Eli Duncan's vineyard in a gauzy veil. He stood at the edge of Golden Vine, his boots sinking into the dew-soaked earth, the air heavy with the sweet musk of ripening grapes. Each vine, gnarled and proud, was a legacy from his father, a tether to a life before Mira Lowell shattered his world. The divorce had left him hollow, but here, among the rows of Cabernet and Merlot, he'd rebuilt himself, stitch by stitch. His calloused fingers brushed a cluster of dark berries, their skin taut, ready for harvest. This was his sanctuary, his defiance against the past. A low rumble shattered the quiet, like thunder born from metal. Eli's head snapped up. Across the field, a bulldozer roared, its blade gleaming like a predator's teeth. It lurched forward, crumbling through the vineyard's fence, splintering wood and snapping vines. Grapes burst under its treads, juice staining the soil like blood. Eli's chest tightened, a scream caught in his throat. He sprinted toward the machine, heart pounding, the ground trembling beneath him. The bulldozer halted, and Garrett Kane climbed from the cab, his broad frame casting a shadow over the wreckage. His grin was all teeth, sharp and smug. "Morning, Duncan," he drawled, wiping sweat from his brow. Behind him, Mira stepped from a sleek SUV, her crimson dress a slash against the green. Her hair caught the breeze, and she tilted her head, lips curling in that old, cutting smile. Eli froze, the sight of her a knife twisting in old wounds. "What the hell are you doing?" Eli's voice cracked, raw with fury. He gestured to the crushed vines, their broken stems curling like broken bones. "This is my land," Garrett chuckled, leaning against the bulldozer. "Not all of it, pal. Got papers saying this strip's ours. Motels going up, and your little hobby's in the way." His eyes gleamed, daring Eli to swing. Mira sauntered closer, heels sinking into the dirt. "Oh, Eli," she purred, voice dripping venom. "Still clinging to this relic? Your vines are a joke. Time to grow up." Her laugh was a blade, slicing through years of buried pain. She'd walked out with half his life, and now she was back to burn the rest. Eli's fists clenched, nails biting into his palms. "You don't get to do this," he said, voice low, trembling. "This is my home." Garrett snorted. "Home? It's a graveyard, Duncan. Move on." He climbed back into the bulldozer, engine roaring to life. Mira lingered, her gaze pinning Eli like a moth to a board. "You're fighting a losing game," she said, then turned, hips swaying as she rejoined Garrett. Eli stood rooted, the bulldozer's growl fading into the distance. The ruined vines lay scattered, their juice soaking his boots. His sanctuary, his proof he could rise from Myra's betrayal, was bleeding out. He sank to his knees, fingers digging into the soil, the scent of earth and loss choking him. Mira and Garrett weren't just building a motel, They were waging war. And this was only the first shot. He rose, jaw tight, eyes burning. The vineyard was his, and he'd be damned if they took it. The mist began to lift, revealing the hills beyond, but a darker storm was gathering in Eli's chest. He'd fight, not with fists, but with everything he had. Mira wanted a war. She'd get one. The Ohio dusk painted the sky in bruises of purple and gold, but Eli Duncan barely noticed. His world narrowed to the wilting leaves of golden vine. He knelt among the rows, fingers tracing yellowed vines, their edges curling like paper in a fire. The air carried a faint chemical bite, not the earthy sweetness he knew. His flashlight caught glints of residue on the soil, herbicide, sprayed under cover of night. His stomach churned, rage simmering beneath a tide of dread. Mira and Garrett weren't just claiming land. They were poisoning his life's work, vine by vine. He drove his battered pickup to Edna Wilkes' farm, the gravel crunching under tires. Edna, wiry and sharp-eyed at 70, leaned on her porch rail, her flannel shirt rolled to the elbows. "Heard about the bulldozer," she said, voice like dry leaves. "Kane's got the county clerk in his pocket, says your eastern boundary's his. They're pushing for that damn motel." Eli's knuckles whitened on his thermos of coffee, its warmth a faint comfort. "They're killing my vines, Edna. Found herbicide. They're not stopping at the fence." His voice shook, betrayal clawing at him. Myra's face, laughing, haunted every shadow. Edna's eyes narrowed. "Garrett's greasing palms, but you've got rights. Check your deeds. And fight dirty if you have to." She handed him a jar of her peach preserves, a small gesture of steel-wrapped kindness. "You ain't alone, Eli." Back home, Eli paced his kitchen, the jar unopened on the counter. He dialed Tobin Reed, his old friend whose farm sprawled 10 miles out. Tobin's voice crackled through. "Hell, Eli, that's war. I've got gear, sprayers, sirens, motion sensors. We'll trap that bastard red-handed." Eli's pulse quickened, a spark of resolve igniting. "Get here tomorrow," he said, hanging up. Under a star-pricked sky, Eli walked the vineyard, the chemical stench stronger now. He found a patch where grapes hung shriveled, their skins splitting. Kneeling, he pressed a hand to the earth, its coolness grounding him. Myra's words echoed, "Time to grow up." But this wasn't about growing up. It was about survival. Garrett's bulldozer was a warning, the herbicide a blade, and Myra's laugh the twist that drew blood. He began digging shallow trenches along the vineyard's edge, sweat beading despite the chill. The soil yielded grudgingly, each shovelful a promise to fight. Tobin's traps would be his first counterstrike, a way to catch Garrett in the act. But as he worked, a memory surfaced, Myra's eyes during their last fight, cold and calculating. She'd always known how to break him. This time, he wouldn't bend. The horizon darkened, clouds swelling with the threat of rain. Eli stood, shovel in hand, the vineyard stretching before him like a battlefield. He wasn't just defending vines. He was defending himself. Garrett and Mira thought they'd won the first round. They were wrong. The night closed in, heavy with the scent of coming storms, and Eli's heart beat like a war drum. The vineyard glowed under the pre-dawn haze, its rows of vines like soldiers standing watch. Eli Duncan, sleeves rolled up, buried motion sensors along the perimeter, their wires snaking through the earth like veins. Tobin Reed, his wiry frame hunched beside him, wired sprayers to a battery pack, their nozzles hidden among the grapes. "These'll douse Kane in paint," Tobin grinned, his hands smudged with grease. Sirens'll scare him senseless. Eli nodded, his jaw tight, the chemical stink of herbicide still lingering in his nose. Every trench he dug was a line drawn against Mira and Garrett. As the sun breached the hills, a faint hum broke the quiet. Sadie Hart, the 17-year-old from down the road, stood at the fence, her drone hovering above. Its lens glinted, catching the vineyard's scars, yellowed leaves, broken stakes. "Saw what Kane did," she said, her voice sharp with defiance. "That motel choked the valley. I'm filming everything." Eli met her gaze, her freckled face set like stone, and felt a flicker of hope. "Keep that drone ready," he said. "We need proof." Night fell, heavy with the threat of rain. Eli sat on his porch, coffee gone cold, eyes locked on the vineyard's edge. The sensors were live, the sprayers primed. At midnight, a low growl pierced the silence. Garrett's truck, its headlights slicing the dark. Eli held his breath as it veered toward the vines, tires crunching gravel. Then chaos erupted. Sirens wailed, a banshee's scream echoing off the hills. Sprayers hissed, splattering the truck with neon green paint. Garrett's shout cut through. "What the hell?" Eli stepped into the yard, phone in hand, Sadie's drone footage streaming live. The truck swerved, paint dripping like blood, and Garrett slammed the brakes, his silhouette furious in the cab. He didn't cross the property line, wary of cameras, but his bellow carried. "You're dead, Duncan." Mira appeared on their porch, her silhouette sharp against the floodlights. "Pathetic Eli," she called, voice like a whip. "You can't stop progress." Eli stood firm, the drone's hum a steady pulse above. "This is my land," he said, loud enough to carry. "Try again, and it's over." Garrett gunned the engine, retreating, but Myra's laugh lingered, cold and barbed. Sadie jogged up, her phone showing the footage. Garrett's truck, paint-soaked, undeniable. "Got him," she whispered, eyes blazing. Tobin clapped Eli's shoulder, but his smile faltered, a shadow crossing his face. Eli didn't notice, adrenaline surging. The vineyard stood defiant, its surviving vines catching the first raindrops. He'd struck back, and it felt like fire in his veins. But as he turned to the house, Tobin's hesitation nagged at him, a crack in the armor he couldn't yet see. The storm broke, rain hammering the earth, and Eli knew this victory was only the beginning. Mira and Garrett would hit harder, and the vineyard's fate hung in the balance. Dawn broke over Golden Vine, but the vineyard reeked of decay, not dew. Eli Duncan stumbled through the rows, his boots crunching on brittle leaves. Dozens of vines sagged, their once lush foliage charred black, grapes shriveled like ash. The chemical stench clawed at his throat, herbicide, fresher and crueler than before. He checked the traps, sirens silent, wires cut. His pulse thundered, betrayal sharper than the loss. Garrett had outsmarted them. Eli dialed Tobin Reed, his voice a low growl. "What happened to the sensors?" Tobin's pause stretched too long. "Eli, King got to me. Threatened my farm. I told him how to dodge the traps." Eli's phone slipped, clattering on the dirt. Tobin's words burned. Myra's betrayal had broken his heart, but this, from a friend, cracked his resolve. "You sold me out," he said, voice hollow. Tobin stammered apologies, but Eli hung up, the vineyard's silence louder than any excuse. He sank to his knees, fingers sifting through poisoned soil, the scent of rot mingling with memories of his father's hands planting these vines. They'd been his anchor. Now they were dying, and he was alone. The crunch of gravel snapped him back. Sadie Hart pedaled up on her bike, her drone tucked under her arm. "Saw the vines," she said, eyes fierce. "We're not done. My drone can fly higher. Catch Kane sneaking in." Eli looked at her, her defiance a lifeline. He nodded, throat tight. "Get me something airtight." Edna Wilkes arrived, her truck rattling. She surveyed the damage, lips pursed. "Kane's playing dirty, but you've got fight left. Check your deeds again. There's gotta be proof your land's yours." She handed him a thermos of coffee, its warmth grounding him. "Don't let Mira win, Eli. She's banking on you breaking." Eli trudged to his porch, the thermos heavy in his hands. The vineyard stretched before him, a graveyard of his hopes, but Edna's words echoed. Fight left. He thought of Myra's laugh, Garrett's smug grin, and now Tobin's cowardice. They thought they'd buried him. They were wrong. He opened the thermos, the coffee's bitter steam rising, and stared at the hills beyond. Sadie's drone buzzed overhead, a faint promise of justice. Inside, he spread old maps across the kitchen table, their edges yellowed. His father's handwriting marked the vineyard's boundaries, a shield against Garrett's lies. Eli's fingers traced the lines, resolve hardening. Tobin's betrayal stung, but Sadie and Edna were still with him. He'd rebuild the traps, find new proof, and hit back harder. The vineyard wasn't just land. It was his soul, and he'd claw it back from Myra's grip. Outside, the Ohio sky churned, clouds heavy with unrest. Eli stepped into the yard, the chemical haze fading under a gust of wind. He picked up a shriveled grape, crushing it in his fist. This wasn't over. The earth beneath him held scars, but it also held strength. And so did he. The attic of Eli Duncan's farmhouse smelled of dust and time, its rafters creaking under a restless Ohio wind. He knelt among stacks of his father's papers, flashlight beam dancing over yellowed deeds and maps. The vineyard's boundaries were clear, inked in bold strokes, but Garrett's lies gnawed at him. Eli's fingers trembled, the weight of Tobin's betrayal still raw. He needed proof, something to bury Garrett and Mira on the town council's floor. Outside, the vineyard lay silent, its poisoned vines a ghost of his father's dream. Eli's chest ached, but surrender wasn't an option. A faint rustle broke his focus. He descended to the yard, moonlight casting jagged shadows. Cole Lowell, Myra's 16-year-old son, stood by the fence, his hoodie blending with the dark. His eyes, wide and guilty, darted to the dead vines. "Mr. Duncan," he whispered, clutching a flash drive. "I heard Garrett. He bragged about bribing the clerk to fudge your land records. Mom's in on it." Cole's voice cracked. "I copied his text from her phone. I don't want her to ruin everything, like she did with you." Eli froze, the boy's words a jolt. Cole, skinny and hunched, looked like he carried the world's weight. Eli took the drive, its plastic cool against his palm. "Why risk this?" he asked, voice soft. Cole kicked the dirt. "You don't deserve this. And I'm tired of their lies." Eli saw his own pain mirrored in the boy's face. Myra's betrayal had scarred them both. "Stay out of sight," Eli said, gripping Cole's shoulder. "If Mira finds out, she'll make you pay." Cole nodded, slipping into the shadows. Eli stood alone, the drive a burning weight in his pocket. The vineyard's surviving vines swayed, their leaves catching the moon's silver. For the first time in days, hope flickered, fragile but fierce. Back inside, Eli plugged the drive into his laptop. Messages lit the screen. Garrett's smug text to a county official, promising cash for doctored surveys. Asterisk, Duncan's land is ours. Make it quick. Eli's blood surged, the proof undeniable. He leaned back, the attic's musty air now sharp with purpose. Cole's courage had shifted the tide, but the fight was far from over. Eli stepped outside, the night alive with crickets and the distant howl of wind. He walked to the vineyard's heart, where a single vine still bore fruit. Its grapes, small but stubborn, gleamed under the stars. Eli touched them, their resilience a mirror of his own. Cole had given him a weapon, and with Sadie's footage and Edna's maps, he'd wield it. Mira thought she'd broken him, but she'd misjudged. The storm was coming, and Eli would be its thunder. Eli Duncan crouched in the vineyard shadows, the Ohio night thick with the scent of rain-soaked earth. Sadie Hart adjusted her drone's controls beside him, her breath visible in the chill. Edna Wilkes, her silver hair tucked under a cap, wired new sprayers, now rigged with blinding strobe lights. Kane thinks he's untouchable, Edna muttered, tightening a bolt. Let's paint him cornered. Eli nodded, Cole's flash drive burning in his pocket. The town meeting loomed, and they needed Garrett caught on tape. Undeniable proof to bury his lies. The vineyard's surviving vines stood like sentinels, their leaves whispering defiance. Sadie's drone hummed, its lens trained on the perimeter. Added night vision, she said, eyes glinting. He won't slip through. Eli checked the strobes, their bulbs cold but ready to blaze. The traps were bait. Garrett's ego would draw him in. Hours passed, the sky bruising with clouds. Then, at 2 a.m., headlights sliced the dark. Garrett's truck growled, edging toward the vines. Eli's pulse raced. Now he whispered. The strobes erupted, searing beams pinning the truck like a spotlight. Sprayers hissed, dousing it in crimson paint. Sirens screamed, a banshee's wail rattling the hills. Garrett swerved, tires spinning in mud, his curses sharp. Damn you, Duncan. The truck lurched, stuck, paint dripping like wounds. Sadie's drone captured every second, its feed streaming to Eli's phone. Got him, Sadie hissed, her voice electric. Mira burst from their house, her silhouette wild against the porch light. You're finished, Eli, she shrieked, hair whipping in the wind. This proves nothing. Eli stepped forward, rain starting to fall, his voice steady. It's just the start. Garrett, soaked and furious, glared but stayed back, wary of the drone. He gunned the engine, retreating, the truck limping home. By dawn, Eli's triumph soured. A county letter arrived. Garrett had filed a complaint, claiming Eli's traps damaged his property and threatened public safety. The meeting was now a battleground. Garrett's bribes might still sway the council. Eli met Edna and Sadie at the vineyard's edge, the paint-stained mud a stark reminder. We've got the video and Cole's texts, Edna said, her voice firm. Show them the truth. Eli knelt by a surviving vine, its grapes small but fierce. The rain had washed away some of the chemical stench, leaving the earth's raw scent. He thought of his father, who'd taught him to fight for what mattered. The meeting would be his stand, but Myra's venom lingered in his mind. She'd twist this, somehow. Sadie's drone buzzed overhead. Edna's maps lay ready, and Cole's courage fueled him. The vineyard was wounded, but not dead. Neither was Eli. Rain lashed Eli Duncan's pickup, its wipers slashing through the Ohio downpour. He sat parked at Golden Vine's edge, the vineyard's wounded rose barely visible in the gloom. Cole's flash drive, Sadie's footage, and Edna's maps lay on the passenger's seat, their weight heavier than steel. Tomorrow's town meeting loomed, but Garrett's complaint gnawed at him. Accusations of vandalism could flip the council against him. Eli's fingers gripped his thermos, coffee bitter on his tongue. Myra's laugh echoed in his mind, her venom a reminder. She'd always known how to twist the knife. Morning brought a gray drizzle. Eli stepped into the vineyard, boots sinking in mud, and froze. The fence bore jagged scars, words carved deep. Asterisk coward. Loser. Asterisk his blood surged, the insult a fresh wound. He grabbed a can of paint, brushing over the letters, each stroke a vow to fight. Across the field, Mira stood on her porch, wineglass glinting, her eyes cold and triumphant. She did this, Eli thought, rage simmering. Garrett's truck was gone, likely spreading lies in town. Sadie pedaled up, her drone case slung over her shoulder. Kane's telling everyone you faked the herbicide damage, she said, rain streaking her face. Says you're scamming for sympathy. Eli's jaw tightened. Garrett's bribes had poisoned more than vines. They'd tainted his name. He looked at the vineyard, its surviving grapes clinging to life, and felt a pang for his father's pride. Edna's truck rattled in, her voice cutting through the rain. Kane's playing the victim, but you've got truth. Speak from the heart tomorrow. Folks here respect that. She handed him a mug of coffee, its steam curling like a promise. Mira wants you broken, Eli. Don't give her the satisfaction. Her words anchored him, grounding the storm in his chest. Eli walked the vineyard alone, the rain soaking his jacket. The carved words lingered in his mind, Myra's cruelty sharper than any blade. He thought of their marriage, her taunts, her departure, the emptiness she'd left. Now she was back, dismantling his world again. But Sadie's footage, Cole's evidence, and Edna's maps were his weapons. He'd fight, not for revenge, but for the vines, for himself. At home, he spread the maps across the kitchen table, their lines a defiance of Garrett's lies. Sadie's text pinged, asterisk, drones ready. We'll nail them. Asterisk, Eli smiled faintly, but the weight of tomorrow pressed hard. Mira would counterattack. She always did. He stepped onto the porch, the rain a steady drum. The vineyard stood resilient, its scars a mirror of his own. He wasn't broken yet. The Ohio sky churned, promising chaos, but Eli's resolve burned brighter. Tomorrow, he'd face Mira and Garrett, and the truth would be his shield. Eli Duncan slipped through the vineyard shadows, the Ohio night heavy with the scent of wet earth and lingering herbicide. He met Cole Lowell in the sagging barn at Golden Vine's edge, its timbers groaning under the wind. Cole, Myra's 16-year-old son, stood hunched, his hoodie damp, eyes flickering with fear. Mom knows I took her phone, he whispered, voice cracking. She locked mine, said she'll send me to Dad's if I don't behave. Eli's chest tightened. Cole's defiance mirrored his own, but the boy was caught in Myra's web, just as Eli once was. You're brave for this, Eli said, his voice low, steady. She hurt us both, but you're not her pawn. Cole's shoulders eased, and he nodded, pulling his hood tighter. She's planning something for the meeting, he said. Garrett told her to make you look crazy. Eli's jaw clenched. Myra's schemes were never simple. He handed Cole a burner phone. Play along, but feed me what you hear. I'll keep you safe. Cole pocketed it, his eyes resolute. I'm done with their games. They parted, Cole vanishing into the dark. Eli lingered, the barn's musty air thick with memory, Myra's taunts during their divorce, her cold dismissal of his dreams. Now she was using Cole as leverage. He wouldn't let her win. Stepping outside, he caught a glow across the field. flames licking Garrett's lot, where he burned stolen vines. The smoke curled black, a taunt against the stars. Eli's phone pinged. Sadie's text. Asterisk. Drone caught Kane torching evidence. Clear shot. Asterisk. His pulse quickened. Another weapon for tomorrow. Back home, Eli paced the kitchen, Edna's maps and Cole's drive on the table. The fire's acrid stench clung to his jacket, fueling his anger. Garrett was erasing proof, but Sadie's footage would damn him. Cole's betrayal of Mira was a risk. Eli felt the boy's fear, his need to break free. He thought of his father, who'd taught him to nurture, not destroy. Cole deserved better than Myra's poison. Eli sank into a chair, coffee cooling in his mug. The meeting loomed, a battlefield where Mira would twist truth into lies. Cole's warning echoed. She'd frame him as unhinged, a desperate man faking crimes. But Sadie's drone, Edna's resolve, and Cole's courage were his army. He glanced at the vineyard through the window, its surviving vines stubborn against the night. Mira thought she'd cornered him, but she'd miscalculated. Cole's stand had cracked her armor, and Eli would widen the fracture. The wind howled, rattling the farmhouse. Eli stood, resolve hardening. Tomorrow, he'd face Myra's venom and Garrett's bluster. The fire across the field died to embers, but Eli's fight burned brighter. He wasn't just saving Golden Vine. He was saving himself, and maybe Cole too. The stars vanished behind clouds, but Eli felt their light within. Eli Duncan stood in his farmhouse kitchen, the Ohio night pressing against the windows, thick with the promise of rain. Maps from Edna Wilkes sprawled across the table, their inked lines a lifeline for Golden Vine. Sadie Hart hunched over her laptop, splicing drone footage. Garrett's paint-soaked truck, his fire-devouring stolen vines. "This'll gut them," she said, her voice fierce. Edna, her hands steady despite her years, sordid deeds, her eyes sharp. "Speak plain tomorrow, Eli. Truth cuts deeper than Cain's lies." Eli nodded, rehearsing his speech, but doubt gnawed. Myra's schemes were never predictable. A call shattered the quiet. Eli's phone buzzed, the county clerk's voice oily. "Your traps violated code, Duncan. We're seizing the vineyard for environmental damage." Eli's fist slammed the table, the maps trembling. "That's Cain's bribe talking," he snapped, but the line went dead. Edna grabbed his arm. "They're scared of your proof. Show the town who Cain really is." Her words steadied him, but rage simmered. Mira was tightening the noose. Eli stepped outside, the vineyard's surviving vines glinting under a sliver of moon. The air carried the faint char of Garrett's fire, a reminder of what he'd lost. He walked to the heart of Golden Vine, where his father's favorite vine still clung to life, its grapes small but defiant. Kneeling, Eli touched the soil, its coolness anchoring him. His father's voice echoed. Asterisk, Earth rewards the patient. Asterisk, tomorrow wasn't just a meeting, it was a reckoning. Back inside, Sadie played the final cut. Garrett's truck, the fire, his smug text from Cole's drive. "Make Duncan's land ours." One read, the screen glowing with betrayal. Eli's heart pounded, resolve drowning fear. Mira would twist his words, paint him as a liar, but Sadie's footage and Edna's maps were ironclad. Cole's courage, risking his mother's wrath, fueled Eli's fire. Eli paced, coffee cold in his mug. The meeting loomed like a storm, Myra's venom a lightning strike waiting to land. He pictured her eyes, cold and calculating, and Garrett's sneer, backed by bribes. But he wasn't the broken man she'd left. Sadie's defiance, Edna's wisdom, and Cole's stand had rebuilt him. The vineyard was his soul, and he'd fight for it, not with fists, but with truth. The wind howled, rattling the shutters. Eli stood at the window, the vineyard's silhouette a jagged line against the churning sky. Tomorrow, he'd face Mira and Garrett in a room full of neighbors, their judgment his battlefield. He wasn't ready to lose, not Golden Vine, not himself. The first raindrops fell, heavy and deliberate, mirroring the weight in his chest. The storm was here, and Eli would meet it head-on, his truth a blade honed sharp. Eli Duncan stood at the podium of the town hall, the air thick with murmurs and the creak of old wooden chairs. Ohio's storm battered the windows, lightning flashing across the faces of neighbors packed shoulder to shoulder. Mira Lowell and Garrett Kane sat in the front row, her crimson dress a taunt, his smirk a challenge. Eli's heart thumped, but his voice was steady, low like the roll of distant thunder. Asterisk Golden Vine asterisk is my father's legacy, he began, eyes sweeping the crowd. It's not just land, it's my life. Kane and Lowell want it for a motel, and they're killing it to get it. He clicked the projector, Sadie's drone footage filling the screen. Garrett's truck, drenched in crimson paint, tearing through vines. Flames devouring stolen lozes, smoke curling black. Gasps rippled through the room. Eli held up Cole's flash drive, his voice rising. These texts prove Kane bribed the county clerk to steal my land. The screen flashed Garrett's words. Asterisk, make Duncan's land ours. Cash is ready. Asterisk, the crowd erupted, voices sharp with outrage. Garrett shot to his feet, face red. That's a lie, he roared, jabbing a finger at Eli. Duncan poisoned his own vines for pity. He's a fraud. Mira stood, her smile venomous. Eli's always been weak, she said, voice cutting like glass. He's spinning stories to save his failing vineyard. Her words stung, echoing their divorce, but Eli didn't flinch. Edna Wilkes rose, her frail frame commanding silence. She held up the vineyard's deeds, her voice clear. These maps, signed by Eli's father, prove Golden Vine is his. Kane's papers are forged. The crowd leaned forward, whispers buzzing. A farmer shouted, "We don't need a motel killing our valley." Cheers followed, but Eli caught Myra's glance, too calm, too knowing. She was planning something. Eli stepped closer to the podium, rain hammering outside. "I've lost vines, sleep, and trust," he said, voice raw. "But I won't lose my home. You know me. Help me save Golden Vine." The room roared approval, but Garrett's glare burned, and Myra's lips twitched, a predator scenting blood. The council chair called for a vote, but Eli's triumph felt fragile. Myra's silence was a trap waiting to spring. As the crowd spilled into the stormy night, Sadie grabbed Eli's arm. "We shook them," she said, eyes bright. Edna nodded. "Truth's winning, but watch your back." Eli stepped into the rain, the vineyard's fate hanging on the vote. Lightning cracked, illuminating Myra's figure by her car, her eyes locked on him. The air tasted of ozone and betrayal. Eli's victory was real, but incomplete. Myra's next move would be brutal, and Golden Vine still bled. Eli Duncan drove through the Ohio storm, the town hall's cheers still ringing in his ears. Golden Vine's fate hung on the council's vote, but Garrett's arrest for bribery fueled Eli's hope. Rain lashed his pickup, the wipers struggling against the deluge. He pulled into his driveway, the vineyard's silhouette jagged under flashes of lightning. Stepping out, he froze. A sharp, acrid stench hit him, Not rain or earth, but smoke. Orange flames licked the vineyard's heart, devouring the last living vines. Eli's breath caught, panic clawing his chest. Mira, this was her answer. He sprinted to the shed, grabbing a hose, its rubber cold and slick. Water sprayed in frantic arcs, hissing against the fire, but the flames roared, fed by an unseen fuel. Vines curled black, their leaves ash in the wind. Eli's arms burned, his shouts lost in the storm's howl. The fire died slowly, leaving a charred scar where his father's pride once grew. He sank to his knees, mud soaking his jeans, the vineyard's ruin a mirror of his heart. Sadie's bike skidded up, her face pale under her hood. "Eli, I got it," she gasped, thrusting her phone at him. Drone footage played. Mira, cloaked in dark rain gear, pouring liquid from a canister, flames sparking as she fled. "She thought my drone was grounded," Sadie said, voice fierce. Eli's rage surged. Myra's cruelty was surgical, timed to break him after his triumph. His phone buzzed, Cole's voice hushed. "Mom's saying you set the fire, Mr. Duncan. She's packing to leave, gonna pin it on you." Eli's grip tightened, the footage his only shield. "Stay safe, Cole," he said, voice steady despite the storm in his chest. Myra's plan was clear: burn his legacy, frame him, and vanish. But Sadie's video was ironclad, and Cole's warning was a lifeline. Eli stood, rain streaming down his face, the vineyard's ashes at his feet. The fire had taken most of what remained, but not his fight. He thought of his father, planting vines under a kinder sky, and of Cole, risking everything to stop Mira. "We're going to the police," Eli told Sadie, his voice a low growl. "Now." They climbed into his truck, the drone footage burning in his pocket. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the vineyard's wounds, blackened stumps, sodden earth. Mira thought she'd won, her betrayal a final twist of the knife. But Eli wasn't broken. Sadie's courage, Cole's defiance, and his own resolve were stronger than her flames. The storm raged, but Eli drove into it, the truth his weapon. Myra's trap had sprung, but it would ensnare her instead. Eli Duncan stormed into the Ohio police station, rain dripping from his jacket, the air sharp with the scent of wet leather and coffee. Sadie Hart and Edna Wilkes flanked him, their faces set like stone. The drone footage burned in Eli's pocket, Myra's betrayal a fire hotter than the one she'd set. At the counter, Mira Lowell stood, her voice trembling with staged tears as she spoke to an officer. "Eli Duncan burned his own vineyard," she said, clutching a tissue. "He's framing us to save his failing land." Her eyes flicked to Eli, a glint of triumph beneath the act. Eli stepped forward, his boots thudding on the linoleum. "She's lying," he said, voice steady, cutting through her performance. He handed the officer Sadie's phone. "Watch this." The screen lit up. Mira, cloaked in rain, pouring gasoline, flames sparking as she fled Golden Vine. The officer's brow furrowed, the room's hum of voices fading. Myra's face paled, her tissue crumpling. "That's fake," she cried, voice cracking. "He edited it." Sadie crossed her arms. "My drone doesn't lie," she said, her tone sharp. Edna held up the vineyard's deeds, her voice calm but iron. "Eli's land is his. Lowell and Kane tried to steal it with bribes and fire." The officer scrolled through Cole's flash drive, Garrett's text glowing. Asterisk, pay the clerk. Duncan's done. Asterisk, Myra's eyes darted, a trapped animal's panic. A shadow moved at the door. Cole Lowell stepped in, his hoodie soaked, his face pale but resolute. "I saw her do it," he said, voice shaking but clear. "Mom set the fire. I heard her and Garrett plant it." The station went silent. Myra's gasped, a knife in the air. "Cole, stop," she hissed, but he met Eli's gaze, unyielding. "I'm sorry, Mr. Duncan. It's the truth." The officer nodded, motioning to a colleague. "Cuff her." Myra's scream echoed as handcuffs clicked. Her protests, "It's a lie," fading down the hall. Outside, neighbors gathered, their murmurs rising over the rain. A farmer clapped Eli's shoulder. "You did right, Duncan." Cheers broke out, but Eli's chest felt heavy. Cole's eyes, wounded yet brave, lingered in his mind. Eli stepped into the storm, Sadie and Edna beside him. The vineyard was ash, but Mira was finished, her lies exposed. He looked at Cole, now walking away, shoulders slumped. "You're stronger than her," Eli called. Cole nodded, vanishing into the rain. The crowd's applause faded, leaving Eli with the truth's weight. Golden Vine was nearly gone, but he'd reclaimed his name. The sky churned, but a faint star pierced the clouds, a promise of dawn. Eli Duncan walked through the ashes of Golden Vine, the Ohio morning gray and heavy with the scent of charred earth. The vineyard's ruins stretched before him, blackened stumps where vibrant vines once thrived. His boots crunched on cinders, each step a reminder of Myra's fire. The town's cheers after her arrest felt hollow. Golden Vine was his heart, and it was bleeding. Eli knelt, sifting ash through his fingers, the gritty texture like grief. He saw his father's face, weathered and proud, planting these vines under a kinder sky. Now, only silence remained, and the weight of starting over. Edna Wilkes' truck rattled up, her voice cutting the stillness. "Earth heals, Eli," she said, stepping out with a basket of vine cuttings, their green tips defiant. "Take these. Your father didn't quit, and neither will you." Her eyes, sharp despite her years, held him steady. Eli took the basket, its weight grounding, a flicker of hope in his chest. He nodded, throat tight, the scent of fresh cuttings mingling with the ash. Sadie Hart arrived, her dog bounding through the mud, a shovel slung over her shoulder. "We're rebuilding," she declared, her freckled face fierce. "Kane and Lowell are gone. Let's make this ours." Behind her, Cole Lowell appeared, hesitant, clutching a small grapevine sapling. "Stole it from Mom's garden," he mumbled, eyes down. "She doesn't deserve it." "You do." Eli's breath caught. Cole's gift, small but earnest, was a bridge over Myra's wreckage. They worked under a slate sky, digging furrows in unburned soil. Eli's shovel bit deep, sweat mixing with ash on his skin. Sadie laughed as her dog pawed the dirt, easing the ache in Eli's chest. Cole, quiet but steady, planted his sapling, its roots curling into the earth. Edna guided them, her hands sure, humming an old hymn. The vineyard stirred, not whole but alive, its pulse faint but growing. As the sun sank, painting the hills gold, Eli stood back, hands caked with soil. The new vines were fragile, but they stood proud, a promise of seasons to come. Sadie's laughter, Cole's shy smile, and Edna's nod were his anchors. Myra's fire had burned his past, but it couldn't touch his future. He thought of his father, who'd taught him to nurture, not destroy. Golden Vine would rise, and so would he. The wind carried the scent of rain and renewal, sweeping away the ashes' bite. Eli looked at the saplings, their leaves catching the last light. He wasn't alone. Sadie, Cole, Edna, and the earth itself stood with him. The vineyard's scars would fade, but its strength would endure. Eli's heart, bruised but unbroken, beat in time with the land's quiet promise. A year later, Eli Duncan leaned against his farmhouse porch, the Ohio dawn bathing golden vine in amber light. Young vines stretched across the fields, their leaves vibrant, grapes swelling with promise. The air hummed with the scent of earth and ripening fruit, a far cry from the ash that once choked it. Eli sipped coffee, its warmth steadying his hands, now rough from months of planting. Golden Vine wasn't just surviving. It was thriving, drawing locals who sipped his wine under strung lights, their laughter weaving through the rows. The vineyard was his heart, reborn. Edna Wilkes shuffled up, her silver braid glinting. "Your father'd be proud," she said, clapping his shoulder. She joined as his partner, her shrewd mind turning Golden Vine into a local gem. Eli smiled, her faith a quiet anchor. Sadie Hart's truck rolled in, her college sticker gleaming. She hopped out, drone in hand, filming the vine's sweep. "Looks like a painting," she called, her dog bounding through the rows. Her footage had made the vineyard a social media star, drawing crowds from beyond the valley. A letter from Cole Lowell lay on the porch rail, its edges worn. "Thanks for believing in me, Mr. Duncan. I'm good with Dad now." Eli's throat tightened. Cole's courage had shifted everything, his sapling now thriving at the vineyard's heart. Rumors of Mira and Garrett swirled. They'd fled to a crumbling apartment, their motel dreams buried in debt. Eli felt no spite, only relief. They were ghosts, fading with the ash. He walked the rows, fingers brushing grapes, their skins taut. The vineyard's scars, burned patches, old stakes, blended into its new life, like lines on a weathered face. Neighbors had helped plant, their hands joining his, a quiet community binding the wounds. Edna's cuttings, Cole's sapling, Sadie's energy, they'd all taken root, as had Eli's hope. He thought of his father, who'd taught him to coax life from stubborn soil. Golden Vine was proof he'd listened. Sadie's drone buzzed overhead, capturing the vine's dance in the breeze. A family laughed nearby, buying a bottle of his Merlot. Eli paused at Cole's sapling, its clusters heavy, and knelt to touch the earth. The pain of Myra's betrayal, Garrett's destruction, and Tobin's failure had faded, replaced by something stronger, peace. He'd fought not for revenge, but for this, a home, a legacy, himself. The sun climbed, warming the hills. Eli stood, coffee mug raised to the vines, their green a quiet triumph. The wind carried laughter and the promise of harvest, wrapping Golden Vine in life. Eli was whole, the vineyard his mirror. He'd lost much, but gained more. The earth held him, and he held it back, rooted forever. Eli Duncan sat on his porch, Golden Vine glowing under Ohio's twilight. Young vines, reborn from ash, reach for the stars, their grapes a testament to survival. Myra's betrayal, Garrett's fire, faint scars now, softened by Cole's sapling, Edna's wisdom, Sadie's fire. The vineyard wasn't just land, it was Eli's heart, rebuilt through pain. His father's words lingered. Earth rewards the patient. Strength wasn't vengeance, but nurturing what endured. Eli raised his Merlot to the vines, their roots his anchor, their growth his redemption. The moral, battles end not in fire, but in what you choose to grow.